Hey guys, this is the first one of the scrolls that Seren Tanwyn found within the vaults of Shira-Mar, way back when you guys visited the elves. This is called the Foundation of Arash. And the scroll is as thus. Yom Atik's first work was the Amanim. It was in an image of himself that he fashioned them. Like himself, they are of his perfect nature, from which all of creation would recognize what would come to be known as the power of good. The power of good manifests in the virtues, of which there are 8: temperance, prudence, fortitude, justice, faith, hope, charity, and empathy. Next, Yamatik formed Arash and fashioned the realms upon it. To each Aman, a realm was given, and also a portion of his authority to govern their realm. He ordered each of them to set their realm in order and to prepare for the coming of humans, whom he would create when all was ready. The Amanim agreed to a common order within the realms. They established the divine order. Yamatik is at the head as creator and sustainer. The Amanim are next in line, serving the will of Yamatik. After this, they created the Malak, who would keep the order and do the bidding of the Amanim. Next, they created the gods and demigods to oversee the seasons, elements, bodies of water, the plants, the animals, crafts, and music, among other things. These deities would be immortal, neither growing old nor suffering death. However, they could still be killed, for they are not eternal like Yamatik and the Amanim, nor are they everlasting like the Malak. All of these speak D&D 5e Celestial as a native tongue, but can also speak any language they need to. To assist the gods, the Amanim created the Ba'er Elohim. Though the Ba'er would not be immortal like the gods, the Amanim gave them a long lifespan, much longer than Yamatik gave to the race of humans. The Ba'er have inside of them a love for things with the spark of life. They assisted the deities with setting the natural things in order. The Fey creatures were a byproduct of the magic used by the Amanim to create the Ba'er. This magic resides inside all Fey, making them magical creatures. Many of these creatures, the Ba'er befriended and sought out, giving them names and a purpose. The Fey creatures speak their native tongues as defined in D&D 5e. The dwarves were created by Kalkus, the god of crafts. Unable to keep up with all the ideas of things to fashion and create, he needed helpers that were heartier than the Ba'er, for they grew impatient with things that did not contain the spark of life. He was granted permission by the Amanim to create the dwarves, so the power of good resides in most dwarves. Dwarves have a love for all things that can be used in craft work, mostly rock, stone, minerals, elements, metals, and jewels. Their domain are the mountains, where they have hewn great underground cities from the rock and stone. Over time, the Ba'er's work seemed to be complete. They were needed less and less by the deities, so they themselves settled into people groups. The group of gods that utilized the power of good became known as the Valen. They settled upon islands called Kiron to the west of Desmond. The Valen loved the Ba'er and most Fey creatures. They convinced some of the Ba'er to settle permanently with them. These Ba'er became known as the Haor. The Haor speak Theon Glose, which is the original tongue of the Ba'er. Most of the Ba'er settled on Dusmon, but not exclusively, and can also be found throughout the realms. These are known as the Tehom. Other Ba'er have settled in specific geographic regions. The Zepe loved the bodies of water, so they settled on islands and coastlands. The Yera loved the trees, so they settled in the forests. All of these Ba'er developed their own distinct tongue from that of their Haor kin, and speak the common Elvish tongue of D&D 5e. Over the centuries, the ability or knowledge of Theon Glose was lost to them. Once humans appeared and began to settle, they began to interact with the Ba'er. The Tehom loved the humans and saw them as guides, saw themselves as guides, teaching the humans and instructing them in the old way, Over time, some of the Tehom, those that could not forget their origins, grew tired of the humans' arrogance. They began to seclude themselves and became known as the Leta. The Leta have as little to do with the humans as possible, though they are not hostile to them. After a long while, the Tehom started to divide themselves. Some dedicated themselves to the greater light of the sun and called themselves the Semesh, or the sun elves. Others dedicated themselves to the lesser light of the moon and called themselves Yari'ah. These divisions amongst the Tehom are really seen more as factions than a true separating of people, more like a cult following. All of the Ba'er loved the goddess Baziel Esteri, but her most fervent followers were the Heor. Through some trickery, the god Napel, deceiving a number of them into leaving Kiran on a quest for Baziel. When the deceit was finally uncovered, a band led by the elf Dared renounced Baziel in shame and embarrassment. They traveled to Desmond, exiling themselves in underground cities and in caves and caverns. They worship a form of the creator whom they call Borea. They have become known as the Abe. The rest of the disgraced Heor followed the Abe to Dusmon, but did not forsake Baziel. Instead, they founded the kingdom of Shira-Mar and are known as the Sheba. They retain the original speech of the elves, or the Ba'er, Theon Glose, which all Ba'er spoke at the beginning. The kingdom of Shira-Mar has always dealt kindly to the Abe. A few generations ago, a faction sprang up within the kingdom that looked down upon the Abe. They felt that the Abe would never return to the faith of Baziel. They met with the king, and he and Hule suggested that they found their own settlement, which they named Lilandrio. I apologize for that, Seren. Bellamy, you know how to pronounce that. I do not. So this scroll seems to end here with much, much more to say, but you have a fragment of the scroll, and that is called the Foundation of Aresh, which is really mainly the history of the elves. Okay.